Central Vermont chapter, which is hosted by North Branch Nature Center. Bridget Butler was already scheduled to present tonight. So next week, you can be sure that next week, next Thursday, we'll have another presentation as well. And with that, I would introduce my sister, for those of you who don't know. Bridget has a lot to offer, and she has been watching and listening to birds for a long time. She has 3 young children. She lives in northern Vermont, and she's taking a very different approach to birding than what we might know. And instead of chasing birds down to identify them and add them to a list, her invitation to us is to sit, be present, listen to the birds, and listen to ourselves, which I can't think of a better theme for us right now than that exact practice of listening to what nature has to tell us and then reflecting on what that tells us about ourselves and about our community and about our families and how we move forward. So with that, here we go.
Mute. Following my own directions that I dropped in the chat box, I unmute myself. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for taking some time out, not only during what would probably normally be a busy week, is just there's so much other things loaded on top of us right now. So I really am grateful that you decided to come and join us tonight. And what I hope is that I give you something not only that you can use with your kiddos, your students, but something that you can use yourself. I know that the past couple of days, I've definitely been making sure I make the time to be outside and get connected through birds. All right, so to kick off in the chat box, I just want you to, everybody type in, some of you have already done this, just type in a bird that you saw today. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch and share my screen so that we can jump into talking a little bit about slow birding. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you. And I do this program for a lot of different groups. I don't work with a lot of school groups. I work with 1 school a year. They allow me to play around with things that I'm thinking about, things that I'd like to try. So I work with Moortown Elementary, and they've helped me develop a lot of different kind of approaches to slow birding with kids specifically. Oh my gosh, look at robin, chickadee, bluebird, yay. All those are starting to pop in. And so what I'll do is through the presentation is I'm going to infuse some of the stuff that we've played around with kids. And it's not just the Moortown kids, it's my kids too. So some of these things are tried and true outside the classroom and can be brought into your home as well. Awesome. All right, so let me see how smooth I can make this transition. We're going to go into.
Bridget, while you're making that transition, I just wanted to invite people as you're joining to introduce yourself in the chat box.
And I'm going to move my whole slide bar down here. This is where I struggle in the smooth transition. Can you guys tell? There's no laughter because you're all muted. That's kind of sad. All right. And it's not working. There we go. Can someone type in that it worked? Because all I can see is my own screen now. Hey, all right. Thanks, Michelle. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about slow birding tonight. And what I'd like to be able to do with you is share a lot of my stories around slow birding and how it developed and how it, like Amy said, it's really different than traditional birding. So come on here. There we go. So what is slow birding? Birding's really, this approach to birding is a lot different than traditional birding. Traditional birding really came out of folks kind of interested in tracking down birds and identifying them It became very competitive and list driven. And when I first got into it, that wasn't really what I wanted. And I got turned off by a lot of birders who were very competitive and kind of guarded with their information. And I just found myself kind of approaching it in a different way. So for me, over time, over the many years of birding, these are the things that kind of were important to me. So one was birding where I was at. I was really happy just to experience birds in any different place wherever I arrived. The other part is starting to know those birds in those different places. And some of what we're going to talk about tonight is knowing what I call your usual suspects. And these are birds that you have contact with every day. The other layer to this is, as you get to know your usual suspects, it's less about creating a larger list of birds, and it's more about spending time with one bird and really getting to know that bird and having a deeper connection. And it goes beyond identification. We're going to talk a little bit about noticing behaviors tonight, rather than just checking that bird off and moving on. So it's a lot about deeper looking and listening and kind of building skills around that. There's been a really great shift in the birding community in the past couple years, and a lot of the new books and guides that are coming out are taking into consideration how we learn, how the right and left brain work together, and also some other different approaches to identifying birds, but it starts with some of the things that are place-based and based on seasonality as well. All right, so why slow bird? So here's why it's really great. So you get a deeper skill set. The moment I started to shift from feeling like I had to go out and I had to identify birds and I had to have a big list and I had to see the first bird when it arrived, wherever it arrived, and I had to see the rarities, my skill level in birding in place really took a big jump. It also changed my mental state, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a little bit. It deepened my connection with place. I had no idea how many birds I had in my backyard until I started doing this, and it's really kind of mind-blowing. And it's also a tool for really good health. So like Amy said, the place that I started with this was really in doing sit spots. And when you do a sit spot, it slows everything down. And as I began to think a little bit more about this, I don't know, I resonate. There's quotes that I come across that I'm like, oh my God, that's what I'm feeling. And so this one from Wendell Berry, from an essay that he did in the 70s, from an entrance in the woods, really to me is part of slow birding. The faster one goes, the more strain there is on the senses, and the more they fail to take in, the more confusion they must tolerate or gloss over, and the longer it takes to bring the mind to a stop in the presence of anything. And what I love about slow birding and kind of just taking it all down is that you can really get out of your head and get into your senses. And that's what birds really allow you to do. So one of the core practices with slow birding, and I'm tweaking a lot of my bird walks to incorporate these moments where we're not trying to get to the end of the walk or get as many birds as we can in the walk, as we're really slowing down and taking those moments to be with the birds. So that's the walk. The other piece that can be really great is a sit spot. And many of you guys use this. Can you give me some thumbs up if you use this? You can use the little reaction thing down at the bottom, or you can just do it in the video, right? You already use sit spots in your practice, either on your own or with your kids. Good, look at all these thumbs up coming in. Nice, 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 nice. All right, so a sit spot is just that, is picking a spot. It's really close by where you can sit and kind of, well, notice things. So one of the first people that I learned this from was Dan Gardoki, who's from the White Pine School in Maine. Actually, he's the former executive director there. He just went out on his own. He had a program called New England Bird Language that was like a 5-day course. And I can remember I took a class with him like 10, 15 years ago. And I had always aspired to go to this week-long session because I really wanted to get into bird language a little bit deeper. And bird language is mentioned a little bit in Coyote Guide, which I know some of you are very familiar with. It's a book by John Young and a number of other folks from that Eight Shields world. So I got a chance to go, finally put the money together and went to this. I'm getting emotional thinking about it right now. And the reason is because it impacted me so greatly. The very first sit spot that we did at this program, you sit for 40 minutes. They help you pick a spot. All of the group is spread out over this area. It was a gorgeous, beautiful wetland. And we sat for the first time, I think it was at the end of the day. So the sun was starting to set and move across the sky. And I'm there thinking, I'm gonna learn bird language. This is gonna be great. I got my notebook, I'm gonna write stuff down. I'm gonna identify things. I'm gonna learn all these cool things. And I sit and my body just settles into that spot. And 40 minutes, 45 minutes is a really long time. So the sit ends, we're all walking back, we're chatting with each other about what we saw. We're all really excited. We're about to head into the dining hall. And I just broke down crying. And it was a moment for me where I was like, this is the first time since being a mom that I have stopped really and stopped thinking about all of these other things and just been there in that moment, in that place with the birds, noticing. And I didn't expect that emotional connection to hit me that hard, but it really, really did. And so, like Amy said, I think about what we're all going through right now and what we're experiencing right now, that when we can take these moments to slow down and get out of our head and into our senses, whether it's birds, whether it's just noticing how the trees and the leaves move, or the sounds around us, whether they're natural sounds or unnatural sounds, is going to be so very valuable. All right. So I'm realizing I'm going to have a challenge here because I really, really want to see some people's reactions here in a little bit, but I'll figure that out as we go. So the sit spot practice, things that I really think about, and these are great things that I do with the Moortown Elementary School, is really making it close by. So my sit spot, this is the back of my house. My sit spot is literally out my back door. So we're like, oh, I need the glorious one that's by the pond, and I need this beautiful view, and I know the spot where there's tons of birds, so that's where I'm gonna go. No, no, no. That's not what this is about. This is about picking a place that's close to you so you can connect with that place and use the birds as a way to do that. So make it close, go often, stay as long as you like. I'm gonna say that if you stay 20 minutes, at least 20 minutes, the birds and the wildlife will come back in around you and allow you these opportunities to see different things with them. So make it close by, go often, stay as long as you like, map your yard. I'm gonna show you some pictures here in a minute. I love this. My kids, we're gonna do this tomorrow. I'm very excited about drawing maps together. And it's a really great way to, again, connect with place. And take some notes, write down what you see. The notes are just for you, so they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to, make a lot of sense. Sometimes they're just drawings or scribbles or things like that. But treat yourself to a nice notebook that you can use for practicing at your sit spot. Here's some photos. This is what I take. I have a Thermarest pad that I blow up. That's what that green thing is. I have a mechanical pencil that I just love. Feels good in my hand. I have a Write in the Rain notebook, and I always have my coffee with me as well. And then I do a little bit of mapping, and I might draw the place. This is a map of a sit spot that I did at a person's house who invited a bunch of their neighbors over, and we all sat in different spots, kind of drew what we were seeing and where it was moving to and from. So there's some paths in there. You can see me down at the bottom. There's some top secret code in there for exclamation point. Exclamation point is like alarm. I'll show you some other ones in a few minutes of some other stuff. Those 4-letter kind of codes in there, TRSW, those are bird codes. So this is really kind of fun. I started doing this with the Moortown Elementary kids, which each of the birds that we learned that were kind of our core birds, we started doing some different bird codes. And what those are, they're the first two letters of the first part of the common name and the first two letters of the second part of the common name. Some birds, there's like a mash, you got to switch it up because some birds have similar codes. But so TRSW is tree swallow, and AMGO. Anybody want to unmute themselves and take a shot at that one? Come on. No one?
American Golden Finch.
Yay!
There we go. Awesome. So here's what's crazy. As I started to do this with my kids are really into Pokemon. So they've made lists. Yeah. So they've made lists of Pokemon bird code. So they started their own code for Pokemon. So it's really kind of fun. It kind of spilled over into something else that they love.
Bridget, will you say what ages your kids are?
Yeah, yeah. So my kids are 6, 7, and 8. And it's girl, boy, girl. Yep. So one of the ways that you can scale this down, right? So that was an adult example. One of the ways that I scale this down with teachers, and I'm going to see if I can do this. Can I do this right now? I don't know if I can write right on the screen. One of the ways that I scale this down is with kids that can't write yet, they can't write words, they can't write that that's a bird, they can draw a symbol of a bird face or a bird shape, or we just stick with sounds. We're not worried about who's flying where and all over the place. We just write the sound. So it becomes a sound map. And here I did this with some different teachers. Liza, were you at this one? Trying to, yeah. Yes, she's like,
actually, so was Janet. Weren't you there as well?
I just spaced out. I was writing.
Oh, no, that's okay. I think a couple of us were.
Yeah. Are you talking about Fairleigh, Vermont?
Yeah, I think that's where we were.
Yeah. That was wonderful. It was very windy, very cold.
Yeah.
And I was a little annoyed that you were making us sit so long, but at the very end, I was in a bush and the birds came right above my head. I said, oh, that's why.
Yeah, I've done sit spots in the pouring rain and you're like, why am I doing this? But there's always something happening. So in this example, we're using like little index cards. Some people have their notebooks out. But what I encourage people to do is if you don't know what it is, just draw a symbol for it. If you don't know what the sound is, let's draw a symbol for it. And so that can really help with little kids and the sit spot time becomes like crazy short. You guys already know this, right? It's not, you don't do 20 minutes with kindergartners. You do like 2 minutes and you draw maps together. All right, let's see. So Amy, and this is where Amy's gonna help me out and she's gonna share in the chat box. I'm gonna see if I can get the chat box up ahead to come up too. So one of the other things that really hit me when I started doing this as a result of that emotional impact that I had first, and then when I brought the practice home to do sit spot over and over again, you know, when I do it now, I get the kids on the bus and I am like, I need 20 minutes because morning has been crazy. So I'm going to go and sit in my sit spot and just observe things. It's really given me this way to relax into the day. And so now I think of it as mindful birding. So really it's about letting go of listing. So I'm not so worried about kind of making sure I take off all the birds that I see. And if I need to do that, I just get that out of the way. And then I'm trying to focus on other things. I let the birds present themselves, kind of like Janet said, I'm sitting here, I'm waiting, what's gonna happen? Sometimes nothing happens, but sometimes the birds really do come through and they come close, especially the longer that you sit. Making the time is really important. And I think you guys have probably discovered this with kids is that the more that you do it, the better they get at it. And the more they're willing to sit and stay in those spots. This is the one that's big for me this week. I can already feel the tension in my shoulders right now. So I'm like, I'm gonna relax and breathe. And this week, as I've done sit spots, I did one this morning. I sat and every time I felt my shoulders go up when I was like, oh my God, I was like, okay, chickadee, nuthatch. That's when the naming really started to help. So it really can help adults and kids kind of find that spot where they can relax and let go. All right, here's the super challenge. Who's the bird nerd in the area, in the group? I'm gonna pull my gallery thing back up here. Who's like a lister? Come on,
Yeah, that's probably me.
fess up. Okay,
That's
so
Zach Coda.
Yeah.
that's Zach. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's what I started to challenge myself to, was letting go some of those things that I had to have with me all the time. This walk, I'm not gonna list. This sit, I'm not gonna list. I'm gonna leave my binoculars behind. Oof, that changes things a lot. And I'm gonna talk about that a little bit in a minute. All right, Amy, were you able to share those?
Yeah, what did you want me to share? The health benefit document?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got it.
So
Yeah.
she's going to pop these in the chat. These are a couple links that you might want to share. So I'm a science-minded person. I need the science to back this stuff up. And then if I've had the experience, I look for the science to back things up. So what Amy's going to share are two studies that went out. One is on how, let's see, bird sound itself can help you with your attention span and help decrease stress levels. And then the other one is about birding and health benefits. And then there are two books, and I'm gonna hold these up since you guys can still see me. This is the one, yep. And Amy's gonna pop these in the chat too. So this one's called Nature Fix. It's by Florence. Oh, I almost just dropped that on my laptop. This is by Florence Williams. There's a lot of really great stuff in here. Including some of these, this work on birds and how birds can really affect your health and your well-being. The other one is called The Biophilia Effect. I know this is all backwards too. You're like, I gotta read backwards now. Clemens Arve. There's she, and they're in the chat now. So both of those papers and these books were really helpful for me in kind of pulling the science into what I'm doing with slow birding. Awesome. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk a little bit about where we're going to bird where we're at. I do this with school groups where we develop a list of our usual suspects. These are birds we're going to see over and over again. We really focus on seasonal changes, like what's possible when, and how that is going to change over time. What's great, what I love about the school year is you can start in the fall and birds are leaving. You get into this core part of the winter where you need a lift and you get to connect with all these winter birds, and they become, a lot of those birds become your resident core birds that are going to be part of your usual suspects. And as you move into the end of the school year, the kids have built this foundation for the usual suspects that they know, and all the birds that start coming back, they pop out to them. And so they know that that bird is a bird that migrates. And we're going to talk a little bit about just being present wherever, whenever, and open to a moment with birds. All right, I figured out how to have my chat box, my gallery, and my presentation up all at once. So using the chat box, this is what I want you to do. I want you to list a few birds. Let's keep it to 3. I want you to think of the 3 birds that you see and hear every day lately in your neighborhood. Maybe even go back a couple of weeks. And let's see what happens here as people start popping things into the chat box. Oh, Zach, you gotta add a little bit more there, because not everybody's just starting with code. All right, so challenge yourself. Zach's got 3 codes up here. 2 of them are easy. The first one is kind of tough because it's a hyphenated bird name. You get bonus points if you can solve Zach's code. Ooh, what happens there? All right, so Paula's got red-tailed hawk, cardinal, chickadee. Ooh, I see chickadee, chickadee. Nice, good. Look at, ooh, what's coming up over and over again? What is coming up over and over again? Good, good. Oh, Annie's throwing down bird code too. Nice. Chickens and roosters. Oh. Oh, we might not be able to include the chickens and roosters in this, but I'm going to take that back. The minute I said it, I was like, no, they're so much fun to watch and study. They have crazy behaviors. So if that's what you got, let's just go with what you got, right? All right, so right now I'm seeing a bunch of common birds that are probably a good core bird to use as a usual suspect. What a usual suspect really does for us is it helps us build a foundation of skills that we can then use as we start to look at other birds. So the most common bird here is black-capped chickadee. That's popping up in everybody's feed, everybody's chat. Northern flicker. We got blue jay here too. Woodpecker, cardinal, good. Cardinal's another good one. Oh, I'm jealous, barred owl. Do you see that one every day? Oh my gosh, I wish I could see a barred. I could see a barred owl every day, just not in my backyard. All right, so these are, oh, I got one new message. Black-capped chickadee. All right, so these are the birds that we're gonna start to think of as our usual suspects. These birds that we come into contact every day. And here's a set of core birds that I think are a really great foundation set to build off of. And these 4 birds are birds that are part of a bird list that I use with the Moortown Elementary School kids. So the biggest one here, anybody know that one? You can unmute yourself, jump in. Don't be shy. One in the big box.
Robin.
Yay! Okay, American robin. This is a core bird. It's really common all throughout New England. It's easy to see. So this is like super accessible bird. This is a great core bird to get to know. And it is, oh, look at this. And Anne's like, I got it, Amro. That's the Amro. American robin, A-M-R-O. All right, and then we've got cardinal. We've got a male cardinal there. The one in the upper left is song sparrow, which I heard today for the first time. I was so excited. I was like, yay. So that is a sparrow that leaves for the winter time. And then we have black-capped chickadee. So what we want to do is we want to start with the birds that we're going to have contact with every day. And those are the ones that we want to try to identify so that we can, well, build a relationship with them. The 2 birds that I think are great core birds to start with are really robin and chickadee. They have great voices. Their physical characteristics are very different from each other, and they're a great bird that you can then use as a bird to reference and compare other birds with. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And I'm so glad you're practicing. That's really cool. All right. One of the other things that a lot of people, they go right to the identification, they get overwhelmed, or they're like looking at this bird book. I will never forget when I first got into birding, a couple of my friends got me a National Geographic book to birds of North America. I probably still have it on the shelf behind me. And I looked at that, I was like, yes, I got a field guide. This is awesome. And I would go out and I would open this book and I'd be like, I don't even know where to start. There were so many birds and it was just overwhelming. So one of the things I really encourage people to do is look at the time of year and think about what's possible right now. We can make a prediction as we go out the door. What is the bird that is possible right now today? So considering that, isn't today the first day of spring, you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so I want you in the chat box again to name the Vermont harbinger of spring. And for those of you in other states, I'm curious. So yeah, if there's, okay, so Rachel's from Wisconsin, Michigan. This is probably gonna be pretty close to the same. Jenna.
Wait, Rachel is not from Wisconsin.
Wait, but I'm reading that in the chat. Why is
It's a joke.
Wisconsin in the
It's
chat?
a joke. She's from Michigan.
Okay.
Because your sister's weird.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. All right, so we've got answers popping in. We've got red-winged blackbird. We've got woodcock, question mark. Song sparrow, because I said that. Good. Red-winged blackbird. Zach is calling woodcocks timberdoodles, which is a common name. Do you know the history, Zach, of that? If you do, in the chat box, put that in. Where did that word come from? All right, agree, woodcock in Massachusetts. Anybody else gonna chime in? All right. Oh, and I see, here's another thing. So this is where, here we go. So this is what I'm gonna put up. This is what I love. Oh, we got red-winged blackbird, got Canada geese, good. All right. So what I did to be able to answer this question is I went to eBird. And eBird is an online platform that is used by people that like to watch birds, birders and bird watchers and listers and all those guys. And what they do is they enter what they see into eBird. And it's a way for you to track your sightings, but then it's also a way to share your sightings with the broader community and with the broader scientific community. And then what the platform does is it spits out all of this great data. And so these are little histograms, or you can think of them as like phenology charts. So the taller that green box is, the more reports came in during that period in that month. And each month is broken down into 4 little sections. You can see there's 4 little rectangles in each of those sections. And as we look at this, we can see that here in Vermont, American robin is really seen throughout the entire year. And then as we move down, we make some other comparisons. Some of you said red-winged blackbird there. So we've still got some sightings of those throughout the year. And then as we drop down, take a look at turkey vulture and American woodcock down there. So you see skinny little thin bars until you hit February and March. So I think good answers include turkey vulture. No one did turkey vulture, did they?
Mhm.
Oh, there we go. All right. So turkey vulture, American woodcock. So you can do this wherever you live. So if you're in another state, you can pull through and look at these little phenology charts for different birds and make a comparison based on what people are seeing actively in your community for birds. All right, this is where Amy and I are going to see if we can coordinate this well together. Again, I am going to send you a handout, and if Amy can't get it, I will try to. So Amy, can you send the, I think I called it spring arrivals handout through the chat? And if this doesn't work, what we'll do is we will send all of these to everyone afterwards. So the file that I'm going to share is a document that I created based on the Vermont Center for Eco Studies does a card that basically tells you when birds are going to arrive and when they likely depart. And I took all the arrival data and I put it into a 1-pager. And basically it says, this is what you can expect to see in February, and this is what you can expect to see the first week in March. And it's just a really great way. You have a cheat sheet. You're like, this is what's possible during this month here in Vermont. And this is what's possible as we move through the rest of the year. Amy, did you find that? I'm wondering if I can do it from my... Look at this. I got it. I can do it. Thanks, Amy. All right. Does everybody see that in the chat box? You should be able to download that right now. So that's seasonal bird happenings. All right. Now, this is where it gets fun. So I've been doing this for about 5 years with my family. We do this thing called our backyard big year. And we make a list starting in January. And the rules are that you have to be standing in the yard. You could be standing in the front yard, you could stand in the backyard, but you have to be standing in our yard and you can see or hear the bird. So, and we keep this list for the whole year. This is a giant Post-it note that's up on the wall in our sunroom. So this is our list for this year. What's really exciting is my kids are old enough now that they can write the bird names up there. So you'll see their most recent bird, which was this week, is purple finch, and that was written by my daughter Chloe. You go up to number 24 and we have common grackle, that was written by my son Colby. So this is a way for us to kind of track what we see and what's possible. It's in a place where it's right near our feeders, and the super data geeky person in me I now have a spreadsheet that has all of these different birds in it and when the timing is for them to arrive in our yard. And that's what's so cool is I can go back through and look at all the dates and be like, oh, this is possible here and there. So let me just give you an idea of what we've learned from our backyard. So this first number is the average number of birds that we see across the 5 years that we've kind of tracked what we've been seeing. This is the most birds that we've ever seen, the most number of different types of species. So we've had 73 species. It was a record year last year. We beat, let's see, the year before the record was 65. So we had 8 more species last year. And I honestly think that's because we're learning how to look and we're starting to notice and mark who's arriving when. So this is a great thing to do in your classroom from the start of the year through. The Moortown kids in the 2 classrooms that I work with have been doing this as well. And so this is the big number that blows my mind. So my tiny yard in downtown St. Albans, which I've got neighbors on either side of me. I'm not out in any big, wooded, I don't have beautiful habitat all around me. The total number of species that we've seen over the course of 5 years is 91 different species. These include birds that don't nest anywhere near my yard. Things like blackpoll warblers. We've had, we've had all of the different kinds of thrushes except I think Bicknell's thrush. So we've had veeries and wood thrushes. We had a brown thrasher come through. We've had rufous-sided towhee. None of these guys, the habitat isn't optimal for it, but they're moving through. Warblers that we've had Wilson's warbler, we've had bay-breasted warbler, some of these warblers that are pushing through to breed up north of us. So once you start slowing down and really paying attention to who's in your yard, and you'll notice, or in your schoolyard, those first top 10 birds are all core usual suspect birds. And just ask, do I feed the birds? Yes, we have bird feeders right outside our window. And so we have those out and available to them. And the other thing that I do is we do our best to garden for birds as well. So we look at species of plants, perennials, shrubs, trees that we can add to the landscape in our backyard that will keep birds there on the landscape too and interested. And we leave our gardens messy. I leave all the dead stuff in the garden all through the winter time, and the birds are still picking at it to this day to get those seeds out of there. All right. All right, are you looking, but are you really seeing? So we're gonna test that. In the chat box, I want you to describe a robin as if you're describing it to someone who has never seen it before. Oh, this is fascinating. I haven't ever done this in a chat box, and this is really cool to see what everybody goes to first to describe the bird. Oh, there's Liza. Did you ever see it? Oh, look at what, there we go. Now we're getting some different stuff in here. All right, so I want to point out that the first couple of things that everybody started with was plumage. What does that bird's plumage look like? And so one of the things that we don't tend to do is really focus on things that don't change in the bird. So things like size of the beak or shape of the bird or size of the bird. So as I scroll down through these, pieces, the first one that popped up, so Liza said on the ground looking for worms, and then Zach right after that, Zach was like upright posture, often standing or perched. So that's getting at behavior, and that's really good as well. So in slow birding, we try to flip our mind and get away from what the bird looks like and more into, I mean, not more what the, less of what the plumage is like and more about the whole bird and some of the things that aren't going to change on that bird. So when I do this with big groups in audiences where we can all turn to each other and talk and share, people really struggle with this. So the robin is a great study in learning to look, because oftentimes we kind of go, oh, it's a robin, I know that, and I move on. So things that we miss are things like, and some of you got these things, like the beak color, the yellowness in the beak. There's actually an eye ring on a robin. They have a little bit of white under the throat as well. With the males, you're going to see a drastic, well, and this is a perfect photo. You're going to see a little bit of a shift in the darkness of the head to the charcoal gray of the back. And the male tends to have a deeper red wash to it. That look, it goes all the way down the belly, you guys. Look at that. It's all the way down the belly. And the back end of the bird has the white on it. So these are some of the things that we kind of gloss over. Once we know a bird and once we've identified a bird, we kind of stop looking. And what slow birding does is it really tries to get people to look a little bit longer and really get to know that bird a little bit more. Amy's like, what color are the legs? I can't tell from this picture. Anybody know what color robin legs are? So guess what? You get to go out and discover that and then send me an email and be like, Bridget, I know what color their legs are. So here are some things that we can start to do a little bit more is taking a deeper look. Part of what I try to do with slow birding is think a little bit about how our brain works and how we can really know a bird. And some of it is using what we call birding by impression, which is actually, let's see, is a great book. And I didn't put this on my list, but we'll get it in the chat. So birding by impression, it's a Peterson guide. It's new, just came out, and it really shifts how you're thinking about looking at a bird rather than looking at the plumage, and you're really looking at characteristics. All right. So you guys probably have studied this more than I have when we think about right brain and left brain. So most birding originally is very right-brained. It's very analytical. It's looking at plumage. It's really kind of focusing in on analyzing those fine characteristics. And what slow birding does is it starts to give you practices and ways to kind of engage your left brain and look at the bigger picture. And what I love about what's happening in the birding community right now, and is evident from that book, Birding by Impression, is we're really starting to engage the left brain in a different way when we think about getting to know birds. And one of the ways that we can do this is really taking away all of the plumage and starting to think about the silhouette and the size and the shape of the bird. And what I love about that exercise that we just did is that many of you started with plumage, and that's the hardest thing because a lot of times that will change in different species of bird. That plumage isn't the same all the way through the year. This is a slide from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and what it does is it gives us a benchmark to use as we think about describing what we're seeing and how we can help train our brain to look differently at birds and really engage that left side of the brain. So we're looking at 3 different size birds and we're able to use them as a comparison. So I said robin is a really great bird to get to know because it gives you this foundation to say, is it bigger than a robin or smaller than a robin? Then we have chickadee or we have sparrow, and we can do that same thing, bigger than a chickadee or smaller than a chickadee. Crow is another one. And then I kind of go up to goose from there in order to kind of start to think about size and shape. And I do this with the kids too, and we talk about silhouettes of birds and what that outline of the bird looks like, which gives us a good idea of proportions, the proportion of the beak to the head, the length of the tail in relation to the body. And when a bird is in flight, the width of the wings in relation to the length of the body as well. These things don't change, whereas plumage can change from juvenile birds to adult birds, from male birds to female birds. So we're really kind of building a search image in our brain by getting to know the same bird deeper and spending more time watching that bird and learning to look. So this is one of the fun activities I actually learned from Amy and the rest of you guys. And I've been using it a lot now, and it's so fun every time I do it. So these are laminated pictures that I have of usual suspects for very common birds that are accessible and easy to see. So this is crow. And what we do is we take objects from nature and we make the bird over again. So this is getting you to think with that left side of your brain about shapes mostly. Let's see, I think I got another, whoops, nope, I don't. So some of the other, this is the Moortown Elementary School, and what they did is they did some tracing, and they all picked different birds, and then they made bird silhouettes that they put up in the classroom. And then they quizzed me when I came in to see if I would know each of these different birds. It was really kind of fun. So relying on silhouette can really help you out. So here's an example from my neighborhood. So one of the birds a set of birds that I struggle with are the blackbirds. So redwing, grackle, starling. Who else can I put in there? I could probably put cowbird in there as well. So common grackle, European starling, redwing blackbird, and robins have that same kind of shape to them. So what we started to do at my house, this was the other reason why slow birding really kind of started to stick in my head. I came up with the term because I was kind of bummed that I wasn't going to be able to bird the way I normally wanted to do, and I needed another word to describe what I was doing. When our kiddos came into our life, I couldn't go out and bird with friends as often, and I was feeling really bad about that because it was such a big part of my life. And as I started to use the sit-spat practice, and as I started to notice the birds on the way to the bus stop, I was like, all of this is just slowing down a bit and being wherever I am. And so that's where the term slow birding came from, were all of these little experiences that came together, including this one. So I walk my kids to the bus stop every day. It's a routine that we have. I don't have my binoculars with me, and it changes seasonally. This is what I used to do at Audubon, Vermont, and one of the ways that we built the birding community out of the Huntington Center was to hold monthly nature walks over and over again, same trail throughout the year, and it really built people's skills and knowledge about what was there at the site through the different seasons. So we have a routine. We're looking at seasonality. I didn't have my binoculars with me, so I really had to look carefully at the birds and learn those silhouettes. And this is where I got really good at on the fly being able to say, that's a grackle, that's a redwing, that's a robin, that's a starling flying overhead, just from walking to the bus stop every day. And then these crazy things would happen where I got to know what was happening with my usual suspects. So this picture here with the tree, the conifer tree, and then the willow tree that's got the yellow tips to it and the little black blobs in it. So in our neighborhood, we have nesting merlins. These are small birds of prey. And one day, as I was taking the kids out to the bus stop, the crows were creating this huge ruckus in the willow tree there. And as the crows called, and they're going crazy and they're bouncing, ah, 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 more crows would come in and they're calling, ah, 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 and the group grew bigger and bigger and bigger until there were about 12 or 15 crows. And the next thing you know, 2 crows take off and they go and dive bomb the top of that conifer tree. And they come back in and they go down again. And then they go back up and they dive bomb the top of that tree. And in a flash, the merlin flew out from the top of that tree and all the crows left and took off after that merlin. So it was the alarm, intense sound from those crows that we knew from seeing them every day. And then that behavior of watching where they were, taking that time, taking the moment to watch them, where we got to see a really cool interaction between 2 of the usual suspects in our neighborhood. How am I doing on time?
Voices. Oh, good.
Anyone? I don't even know what time it is. I'm gonna look.
It's
5
almost
minutes.
6.
All right,
6.
we're gonna speed through. So one of the things that we can also do in slow birding is like learn to listen a little bit differently. And we can pull apart the song into different chunks that are a little bit easier to kind of digest. Learning birdsong can be really overwhelming, especially as things come back into play during the spring. And so some of the things I like to think about are, rather than let's identify the bird, what are the sounds that we're hearing and what do they mean? So birds have 5 different voices. They have songs, 2 songs. They tend to be longer, more melodious. Some birds have a larger repertoire, but we can think of songs having 2 different purposes, one for mating to attract a mate, and one for territory. They have different calls. Calls can be contact calls where they stay in touch with one another. Begging calls are like when my kids get off the bus at the end of the day and they're like, I'm so hungry, I just want this. So when you hear that wham, 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 wham on the landscape, that's probably begging young. It's going to be the right time of year. So we're thinking in like June or July. Then you have sharp, short, loud, intense calls that kind of, you can feel it in your chest. Those are the alarm calls. And those are things that I use to kind of get people, when they're on their sit spot, thinking about what they're hearing, not necessarily who it is, but kind of going beyond, and then looking at the story that's happening across the landscape. All right, so we can do this with robin. We know robins have that beautiful song that they sing in the morning. Anybody hear that one this morning? I did. That was my first bird of the day. Now, at the end of the day, they want to make sure that they let everybody know that this is their territory and they're going to come back. So it gets a little bit more intense. You feel the intensity in that? He's like, I am not messing around. I'm going to bed, but I'm going to get up and I'm going to claim this place again tomorrow morning. The cool thing about robins is they also have 2 different grades of alarm. So they have a low grade alarm and a high grade alarm. And so you can play around with this. Can you sneak up on a robin and get them to go into that low alarm? And if you run up on a robin, can you get them to go into the high grade alarm? Can you watch your neighbor's cat make the robin do the same thing? So here's low grade.
Hey, Bridget.
Yeah.
People can't hear the sounds.
Oh no. Is it because maybe my audio isn't sharing?
I don't know.
Mm,
They're not able to hear.
that is not good.
I wonder if it's because your headphones are plugged in.
Probably. Let's try that. Ooh, smart girl. Is that any better? Okay. Hands up. Let's do it again. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. How do I go back? This is what's hard when it's in large screen. I don't know how to go back now. Oh, there we go. We just roll it. All right. There we go. So that's the cheerio, cheery me, cheerio, or cheer up, cheerily, cheerio. People heard that?
Yep.
All right, good. People have heard that one before. All right, how about this one? So this is much more intense, quicker in pace, a little bit higher tone. All right, and the low grade alarm. So I was a little nervous, but not sure if this is a big deal or not yet. If it goes into this sound, that's a little bit more intense, faster. So robins are a really great bird to make your core study out of, and it's a great bird for school kids because they can see it in the schoolyard and they're likely to see it at home as well. And now we're going into this again. Okay. So Robin and Chickadee both have that. I am going to try to open the chat box again and share a file which breaks down all the voices for you. Let's see if I can get this file. So this is one that I put together where it grabbed Robin and Chickadee voices. Chickadee voices are great to listen to as well. There we go, Robin and Chickadee voices. Everybody should have that one. So today I was walking, my kids and I went to Russell Park near Arrowhead Lake, and we were walking, we were hearing the chickadees doing the, so that nice clear whistled note. And we were talking about how many parts it had, how many parts they could hear, because it was also doing just, so that was 2 parts, and then it switched into 3. And I said, so do you guys think it says, hey, sweetie, or do you think it says cheeseburger? And what did they pick?
Cheeseburger.
You know it, cheeseburger. Mm-hmm. So it had those 3 parts. And my daughter started clapping like they do to understand the different syllables in words. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. It's just like learning the patterns and the pauses in bird song. So those little mnemonics, those little words that you put to bird song, feel free to make them up. So I had a kid one time on a walk say to me, I said, so the red-winged blackbird says conklery. And he said, Bridget, it does not say that. I don't know what you're hearing. And I said, okay, what are you hearing? And he said, that bird is most definitely singing Burger King. And I was like, fine. If that's what you want and that's what is connecting you, that's how you remember that bird. So Paula just asked, where are the downloads? Paula, you can find the downloads in the chat box. You should be able to find that chat feature across the bottom of your screen. All right, I'm trying to remember how many slides I have left. Okay, so we're getting to behaviors, and we're almost at the end where we'll be able to take a few questions. So this is my favorite part of slow birding. One of the things that made me crazy about birding was it stopped when you identified the bird for the most part on the walks that I was on. And when I was studying bird language too, bird language was all about the 5 voices. And it stopped and it said the most important voice to listen to is alarm. So we were looking at behaviors related to alarms, but we weren't looking at all these other behaviors. And I was sitting there on my sit spot, other behaviors were happening. Like if you see this bird that's near the flight and the posture box there, he's got the like yellow throat and his head is just totally bent back. I'm like, what is going on there? I was seeing things like that and I wanted those answers. So I started digging a little bit more into behaviors. So see, these are some of the different behaviors that you can kind of tease apart and start to look for with your kids. So there's all kinds of stuff out there. And as I started sharing this with some of my friends, and I really hope this works, I connected with this woman who is in Ontario through Twitter. And she does she does a lot of outdoor stuff with her kindergartners. And they have bird feeders set up outside the window. So this is a little video snippet. I'm gonna crank the volume up because it's really cool to hear what the little kid says about this bird. We had a whole conversation after she posted this video on Twitter talking about behavior and what we thought and what the kids thought was actually going on. Okay, so I'm gonna crank my volume way up. So hopefully you can hear this. Did you hear what she said? She said, stop being angry, Mr. or Mrs. And I thought, wow, what was that bird doing? And so I grabbed one of my favorite bird guides. And so I saw this post on Twitter, and I went and I grabbed one of my Stokes bird behavior guides. All right, and in just a minute when I finish the story, I'm going to share with you my bird list, my bird book list, which this is on. This is a set of 3 volumes, and I looked up red-winged blackbird, and that tail jerk that the red-winged blackbird was doing is from agitation. And so I asked them what was going on around that bird when that happened, and they sent me a message back that said, well, there were kids coming out onto the playground, and they were disrupting where the feeders were. And I thought, oh my God, that's so cool. So I looked it up, and wouldn't you know it, in the bird guide, it shows the behavior of the tail bob is aggressive, disruptive behavior, mainly focused at other animals that are not birds and people. And I was like, yes, for the win, fun behavior. So I'm like typing them back, sharing all of this. It was so much fun. And we didn't even talk about what the bird was. We didn't even need that because we had this behavior there. So it was a moment. So that's what I want. I want more moments like that. And that's really what slow burning is about for me. I'm going to skip over this. I'm going to ask me sometime to tell you my Big Puffy story. So this is from my backyard. It's about Big Puffy, the song sparrow. If you send me an email, I will send you the Big Puffy story, which again, I went into the bird guides and I found these images of the same behavior that I was seeing in the birds in my yard right outside my feeder. So cool stuff. All right. So this is a quote that I'm going to leave you with to kind of wrap up here. As we think about kind of shifting how we connect with birds and really kind of slowing down and focusing on some of these other things rather than just what it is. And I love this quote. This is from Thor Hansen. He wrote this really cool book called Feathers, The Evolution of a Natural Miracle. And in it, he writes, in a result-oriented culture like ours, it's easy to get hung up on endings, on figuring things out and finding precise solutions. But a true fascination continues building with each new piece of information, making new connections, revealing new patterns, and opening new perceptions. The exploration of natural miracles is a fundamentally open-ended and curiosity-driven enterprise. It reminds us that science is not always about the answer, it's about the questions. And I know that you guys are doing this with your kids, which is why I was so happy to be invited to speak with all of you tonight. You're doing fabulous, great work, and I hope that you're able to incorporate a couple of these things into your work moving forward. I am always available to answer, well, maybe not now, because now I'm home a lot with 3 kids for a few weeks and maybe even more. But I will do my best to answer any questions that you have. I love Stumper things. I love it when people record stuff, whether it's on video or audio or whatever. Send it to me. I love playing around with that. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. These are some of the conferences I'm hoping to be at in June. We'll see what happens with them. And of course, you can find out more about my slow birding work at birddiva.com. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to stop talking. And maybe if we pop up a few questions, we can see what I can answer in just a few more minutes. Rachel, thank you. Rachel's like, oh, that was so nice. Thank you. All right, I'm going to pull my chat screen up here. I know. Yes, okay, so Rachel, I love the intuition of the child to know the bird was upset. Seriously, that blew my mind. And that's what I love about this. When we go this traditional route of teaching birds and how to identify birds and what the bird is, and just like, I don't know, the nests and which is all great, right? There are all these other little gifts that happen in the moment that we can start to draw kids and adult attention to. Somebody asked a question about bird feeders, and it was Anne, and I think she left. So I want to make sure that Anne gets this information. So bird feeders in schools. So at the Moortown Elementary, we did put up bird feeders during the winter time. And we had sets of bird feeders that attached to the windows. So they were really close. And we had bird feeders in trees. The tough thing about the classrooms that I was working with is they were in the classroom windows faced the parking lot. So they had a couple crabapple trees to put them in. But we had pretty good luck with some feeder birds, and then we did walks and sit spots out there. One of the things that we discovered, and it was totally by accident, the teachers bought primary colored bird feeders. So there was a green feeder and a blue feeder and a red feeder. And we could literally sit there and say, look at the bird on the red feeder. It was so great to be able to focus where everybody was looking instead of trying to describe which feeder it was or whatnot. So it was really super cool to be able to do that. We fed mainly black oil sunflower seed with those, and then took the feeders down during the summer. So they don't stay up through the school year because it's too much maintenance. And for some of us, the bears wake up. So we got to take those down. Yeah, Michelle's like, bears. Yeah. So take those down. Any other questions, thoughts, things where you're like, oh, this would work good with my group of kids that you're like, you want to share or put out there, or say it. That's good too. We can do that.
Bridget, I just want to say I love the idea that you shared about the big year, the backyard bird big year, because I feel like that's a thing that we can share with parents right now. And any of those simple, it's just like paper, pencil, what do you hear?
Yeah, totally. It's, yeah, and it's just simple, and it's right there as well. Even my daughter today wanted to just write down what she was seeing as we go. And as you start to like, apply that to older kids, you can start getting into things like eBird, Vermont eBird. And that is that citizen science connection too, where now that we know our usual suspects and we're getting to know them, now we can use some of this knowledge to kind of pay it forward for birds through conservation and citizen science. Starting with shapes, etc., and focusing on a few birds. Make it small, digestible chunks, right? Like, let's get to know the robin really well. And as everybody knows robin, then you can say, ooh, or today, when was it? One of my kids the other day was talking about a bird that was at the feeder, and I said, well, was it bigger than this or smaller than that? And that size frame helped us get down to the bird much faster. I learned that from answering tons of bird questions from people. Is really, people are like, well, it was brown and it did, and it had a yellow thing on its head, and I would say, where are you? Where do you live? What's the habitat like around you? Where was the bird sitting and what was it doing? Like, those were my first 3 questions, because just the plumage wasn't enough to figure out what it was.
Bridget?
Yeah.
Could you say your first 3 questions again? I gotta write that down.
Okay, yeah.
Where you are.
Where are you? Where do you live? Like, what's your address? And what's your, like, are you in Vermont? Are you in Maine? Are you, I'd get emails from all over the place. I'm like, a guy handed me a picture at a talk the other day, and it's like a baby owl. And I was like, I have no idea. I was like, where was this picture taken? He goes, Patagonia. And I'm like, okay, so I need to do a little bit of research here. So that's my first question, where? And then we're going to drill it down a little bit more. So you're in Vermont, but what kind of habitat is around you? Yeah. So I say, describe where you live. What does that look like? What are the types of trees that are there, and the shrubs and the plants and all of that? And then I say, what was the bird doing? And a lot of times, like, that'll get me an idea. Was it on the ground? Was it, up in the trees? Was it hovering? That teases out some of those behaviors. Another one of the things that I do with groups is I'm like, there are so many other questions that we can ask about birds other than what is it? So make a list of those different questions. What is it doing in this moment, and why? That's the most magical question, because there's so many possibilities. It's really cool. You don't even have to know what the bird is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like those 3 questions are a great send home for parents and families right now. I mean, that's very, very simple, and families can do that together.
Yeah. What's our habitat address like? And who likes it? Who likes it? What is the bird doing? We used to play this game from the bird list at one of the, I think it was New England Bird Language. So we kept a running list of all the birds that we were seeing. And I got to the point where I was playing a game with people and I was like, pick a bird on that list and I'm gonna try to guess what bird you're thinking in. I got it down to 7 questions. And so those 3 questions were the first 3. And I'm trying to remember what the other ones were. And then you started talking about families of birds. So what groups of birds could we put it in? So is it a raptor? Is it, is it one of the blackbirds? Is it a woodpecker? Is it in that woodpecker family? So now you're talking about different family groups of birds and kind of breaking it down that way. What does it eat? That was the other one. Like, is it a seed eater? Is it a fish eater? Is it, does it eat other birds? Those kind of things. So yeah, I got good at like 7 questions and I can figure out which bird you picked on that list. And it always started with habitat. Always started with habitat. All right. We gotta go. You gotta go. Thank you again. And reach out and stay in touch and be well. Take some of these moments for yourself because a sit spot can do wonders right now. Super.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks, Liza, for hosting.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bridget. And also, I just wanted to plug again for what Amy mentioned at the beginning, that the Central Vermont chapter is going to be having regular meetings on Thursday nights these next several weeks. And there's lots of opportunities to take online courses at Antioch right now and through their nature-based certificate program and the certificate for trauma-informed education and certificate in mindfulness education. So it's good to see you all. Thank you for being here. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, Berkeley. Bye, Berkeley.